Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for making the time for this. Thanks for joining us, especially to all of the cadet athletes. We know you have a lot going on right now, and the fact that you made time to join us for this means a lot. And even more so to our panelists tonight, who I'm going to let introduce themselves here in just a few moments. Thank you to all of you for being here. Thanks for making the time to contribute to all of our development as leaders of character for the Air Force and service to the nation. We appreciate not only what you do, but how you do it and the thoughts you share with us as we go tonight. So thanks. Thanks for being here. And to all the athletes, we know, like I said, there's a lot going on right now. You're dealing with a lot, and we acknowledge that. The uncertainty of these times, the complexity of the schedule and what the schedule is going to look like. We acknowledge that the times are uncertain. And I think you're going to find as we go tonight that the panelists have dealt with so much of the same as what you're dealing with. From preparing for an Olympic Games that got postponed and maybe not certain if they're going to happen when they're scheduled to happen next at this point. And, you know, how do we maintain that focus as we go? How do we keep ourselves in the game, so to speak? So we want to show the results of that one question survey we asked you, if those are ready, just to get a sense so we can see and so all of you can see what, you know, really the mood, dare I say even the emotions that we're feeling right now. And as you all know, I think probably the way these word clouds work is the words that are the largest are the ones that are show up most frequently in what you entered. So we get it, the frustration, the uncertainty, the confusion, some anxiousness, restricted, being overwhelmed, challenged. We get it. And thanks for dealing with what you're dealing with the way you're dealing with it. In the attitude, the work ethic, it says so much about you. It says so much about the Academy and the way you represent our Academy. So thanks again for that. I'm going to turn it over now to the athletes to introduce themselves, but you know, just so you know, we're professional athletes, Olympic athletes, world-class athletes, A-10 pilots. The people who have made time to join us tonight are just absolutely incredible in what they do. You know, Olympic competitors and medalists, world champions, NCAA All-Americans, scholar, academic All-Americans. So I'm going to call on them and let them introduce themselves for a few minutes, and then we're going to get going with some questions and answer. So Jaden, if you could start us off.
Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's Jaden Cox here. A little bit about me and my career. I'm a three-time NCAA champion, 2016 Olympic bronze medalist, 2017 world bronze medalist, and currently, as of the last 2 years, I'm a world champion. I'm excited to be here. Obviously, we're all going through a lot, so I think this is great to have this camaraderie and this time to come together and have these conversations and ask ourselves these difficult questions and hopefully get some answers that will help us guide us through this. So thank you for having me. Let's get to it.
All right, thanks, Jaden. And Kelly.
Hi, my name is Kelly Nazi. I swam at UC Berkeley, and I was captain my senior year and very proud of that. I was part of the 2015 National Championship team, was an All-American a couple times in 2016, and one of my biggest accomplishments was I was 27th in the world when I was 16 years old in the 100 butterfly, and that same year I broke my back. So one of those things I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys tonight. As much as I wish it could be in person, I think this is going to be a great space to talk about all of those great words you guys put out there, whether they're positive or negative. And a little bit more about me. I work at USA Swimming now, so I completely understand what it's like with all these events being canceled, and look forward to talking more with you guys.
Thank you, Kelly. Nate.
Hey guys, my name is Nate Weber. I am a U.S. Army Green Beret, so Special Forces. I've done that for the past 10 years, and I also have the distinction of having represented the U.S. at the 2018 Winter Olympics in four-man bobsled. So the first Green Beret active duty special operator to do that at the same time. So I think my experience will be able to apply to you guys pretty well in both athletics and as you move on to be future leaders in the Air Force. So I'm super excited about that and very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. Kara.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kara Winger. I throw the javelin. Dana Lyon is actually my coach, so I periodically come up to the Air Force Academy to train with her. Not right now, obviously, but I also coach a prep school kid right now, volunteer, so that's really fun, and I just love my connection to the U.S. Air Force Academy. I'm a 3-time Olympian so far, hopefully number 4 coming into Tokyo 2021. And at 2019 World Championships, I earned 5th, which was the highest place ever for an American female javelin thrower at that competition. So had a lot of momentum coming into 2020, was really excited, but we'll get into some of the extra challenges that I've faced even after having the 6th longest throw in the world, because I did get to compete one time on the 2020 season, but super happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Kara. Casey.
Hi, I'm Casey Kreider. I'm a graduate of the University of Iowa. I'm currently the long snapper for the New York Giants. While I was at Iowa as a team captain, honorable mention, all Big Ten. I spent my last 4 years in Denver and actually did some panels in person, so I'm excited to be back. I was the 2019 AFC Pro Bowl selected long snapper and had a lot of fun doing that and, going through a lot of different things. Obviously this season with COVID and everything we go through, but also living in a new, more populated area than I was when I was living in Parker, Colorado. So excited to hear the questions you guys have and hopefully give you guys some great answers. And thanks again for having me.
And Lieutenant Colonel Hall, ma'am.
Hi, great to be here with you guys tonight. So I'm a USAFA graduate, 2001 fired up. Played soccer for 4 years there and was the team captain. So I really appreciate the what you guys are doing right now and remember your shoes just a few years ago. So I went off to fly the A-10 for several years. So A-10 pilot, best aircraft ever created. And then I've gone and done some schooling. So I got my PhD in international affairs after working, going to school and working at the Pentagon and the White House for a little bit. And then I've now transitioned to writing strategy for all the South America, Central America and Caribbean AOR for the air component. So definitely know what uncertainty is like in dealing with partner nations, countries. Flying the A-10 is uncertain all the time. And so if you guys want to talk uncertainty, we can definitely do that. Definitely relay my experiences of transitioning from an athlete at the academy when all I wanted to do is play soccer to actually becoming an officer and transitioning to that world. And then everything that you guys want to talk about. So I look forward to participating in this panel and we have a great team here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. And Dr. Steele, sir, over to you.
All right, thank you for having me. I'm a 2-time Olympian in the sport of bobsled, Division I All-American in track and field, decathlon. Got my PhD in educational leadership just a couple months ago, MBA from UC Berkeley. So Kelly, you and I got some connection there. I was the CEO for USA Bobsled Skeleton for 12 years, up until about a year ago. I'm currently the Vice President of Sport for the International Bobsled and Skeleton Federation. And I'm looking forward to tonight's session. So thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Darren. Thanks for being here. Thanks to all of you for being here. We appreciate and value the time that you're giving to be engaged in this conversation with us. We have a quick poll for all of the cadet athletes joining us. If we could go ahead and pop that up. We have a question we're going to start off with, and then we're going to give you the opportunity through the Q&A function in the Zoom webinar to ask questions. And then this will be whichever question you choose, whichever one is most popular among you, is what we will ask last, will be the last question of the evening. So go ahead for the cadets and select the question.
Results are still coming in.
Just take about 10, 12 more seconds and select which
And
Question.
5 more seconds. We are going to close this poll.
All right, there you go. The greatest adversity you ever faced, and what was the biggest factor that helped you deal with it? So for the panelists, obviously we'll bring that up again at the end, but be keeping that in mind for the last question of the evening. So for everyone, a couple just admin instructions type thing. And this is for the cadet athletes. What you're going to want to do is to ask questions. Go to the bottom of your webinar window, and there you should see a black Zoom bar down there, and you have a couple buttons that you can select on. One is Q&A. And what we want you to do is use that Q&A feature, put your question in there and hit send. And then as your questions populate, Coach Barber and I are working on actually asking the questions of the athletes. So for the cadet athletes, you won't actually ask the question personally, but you'll put it in that Q&A, and then Coach Barber and I will relay that to the athletes. And while you're starting to put some questions in the Q&A, as I mentioned earlier, we really want to focus this first question. I'll ask the first question while you're putting questions in there. We really want to focus on, the current conditions in this COVID environment, in this environment where we need to be physically distanced, where there's challenges with how we practice, how we condition. And for the panelists, thinking of your own experiences in this environment, the own uncertainty that you are encountering just based on what you're doing right now. What are you doing to stay focused? How is it that you really stay focused on a goal you've created or something you're trying to achieve that really helps you maintain the discipline to be who you want to be and do what you want to do? And the first person in my view there is Casey. So Casey, if you don't mind starting off with that. And for this first one, just a couple minutes from all of you while we get some questions populated in the chat, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, the thing I've learned in this season that we're playing amidst COVID is that every week we have no clue who's going to be on our roster, who's going to be on the opposing roster, how many days we can practice a week. So the things that I focused on is I know there's a list of 5 or 6 things that I need to do to be prepared to play in a game, whether that's watching film, getting my own workouts in, even if I have to do it on my own. I know the 5 or 6 things that if I do them, I'll go into the game confident and have a feeling I can be successful. It's kind of like the things that need to happen to allow myself to be successful. And I think I just focus on those things as information comes in, and whether we have a regular full roster on our team, or we lose a few guys to COVID or just regular injuries throughout the season. I think it's kind of helped me narrow my focus and allow me to know and honestly learn myself a little bit better to be successful, because I kind of eliminate the distraction and things that I thought maybe I needed to focus on. I don't focus on anymore. I know, nail down these 5 or 6 things, I'll be successful in the game. Or at least prepared. And if success doesn't come, adjust from there.
Great, thanks. Jade.
I think for me, it's just been a focus on what I can control. And also for me, I've always prided myself, something I always say is that at the end of my time here on earth, if I was known for being a good wrestler, only for being a good wrestler, that I failed in life. So really for me, I've taken this time to put up or shut up at this point in time, and trying to find ways to live my life and to really represent that to the best of my ability. And, but mainly with training and everything, I just keep my focus in on what can I control, what can I improve on, and, making adjustments. I'm not a person that, I put uncertain as one of my words for that question. But for me, uncertainty isn't something I look at with fear. I look at it with excitement. I used to tell people all the time that the problem with plans is they fall apart. And so I've always been a person that kind of goes with the flow and, looks to make the adjustments where it's necessary. And, being someone that can adjust on the fly, which I think truly is what makes champions. I think some of the best athletes in the world are able to do that and face these obstacles by being able to make these adjustments. And that's what my focus on is on every day.
Thanks, Jaden. And Lieutenant Colonel Hall, ma'am.
Yeah, I would actually agree with Jaden. I think he made a great point about what you can control. I personally think sometimes we use information to try to control things, but right now information is not as reliable as we would like. So we just got to be careful what we expose ourselves to. Be careful what you surround yourself with. I tend to find that I surround myself with the people who have positive attitudes, and that really helps me, especially in this time when a lot of negativity could really influence your day-to-day. And then just reminding yourself that it'll pass, right? All of this is not going to be forever. It's going to be temporary. So to Casey's point, you can't stop training. You can't stop performing. It's going to pass, and it'll pass differently than we want it to, but it'll end. So for me, it's reminding myself that information is not going to change the circumstances per se. Don't try to over control your environment, and then just surround yourself with people that are going to support making you a better person over time and getting you to reach your goals.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. And Kara.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Control what you can, surround yourself with positive people, and like figure out what your actual goals are. As an individual sport, like outdoor athlete, it was very easy for me to train. Like in the pandemic, there's nothing really that I couldn't do that I would normally do, save being on a track surface. I threw javelins in a park instead of at the track. But I'd said for a long time that like, I just want to see how good I can be. And I could have taken this opportunity as a 34-year-old javelin thrower to just rest. Like, I have this gift of time. I can let my body kind of heal in ways that it doesn't get to. But like, what a cool challenge to put my words to the test and see if I was going to do the work to see how good I could be. And I felt better than I have in a very long time after the creativity that comes with figuring out how to train at home. But truly, again, in the summer, as a summer athlete in an outdoor sport that I do by myself, it was, you know, a really fun challenge to be able to figure everything out. And that being said, an individual sport athlete, I actually invited a teammate, a Team USA teammate, into my home. One of my best friends in the world, she's a fellow javelin thrower, moved into my house for 4 months. And so we trained together the whole summer as javelin throwers and had just had a great time. So kind of made lemonade out of lemons in a way that I would never get to except for this weird summer.
Thanks, Kara. And Dr. Steele.
Yeah, I think the first thing is you got to have faith that this is going to end, and it will. And when it does, where are you going to be? And I'm a pretty competitive person, and so in situations like this, I think about every setback that affects my competitors as well as me as an opportunity. And so you know that your competitors are probably going to be struggling the same way. And so what can you do to beat them during this challenging time? And, you know, out train them, be more creative, you know, just get through this in a better way and make it an opportunity to, you know, get better than your competition. And just as an example of what I've done personally is, you know, fairly early in this pandemic process, started hearing people joking about, you know, gaining weight during the pandemic and getting out of shape and the gyms being closed. And so I thought, okay, well, I don't want to get to the end of this thing and be fat like everybody else. So I've dropped about 35 pounds since January, and I'm in great shape. I set up a home gym, and it was just because of that challenge of the moment. So make it an opportunity and use it to your advantage.
Thanks, Darren. Kelly?
I think at the beginning it was very hard for me because I am an overly optimistic individual. And a lot of my friends were coming to me, you know, you're the most positive person I know. I need your help. I need your help. And at first I was starting to feel a little bit like, how am I going to manage all of this without worrying about myself? And that's one thing that I've really taken into account is taking care of myself during this time. And just taking every day one step at a time, my boss and I even say 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time, because things change so quickly and so rapidly that you just have to stay very flexible with the situation, very nimble. And I'm trying to still help all my friends who believe I'm very positive, even though there are some days I'm not. And we've tried to get really creative during this time. Staying away from social media as much as possible has helped me a lot. Staying away from watching what other people are doing and getting creative with my own workouts. Over here in my corner, if you could see, I have windshield wiper fluid, and those are my weights right now. And, you know, it's not the luxury of the pool that I wish I could have on a normal basis and still love to swim, but just trying to take one day at a time and one step at a time.
Thanks, Kelly. And Nate.
So I kind of see this, kind of like Darren said, as a big opportunity. So in the world of sport, you don't really get many opportunities like this to deal with great uncertainty. When you're in the military, when you're going to be an officer in the future, uncertainty is going to be a place where you live. Like that's going to be a big part of your job is dealing with uncertainty. So you're going to have a huge opportunity to kind of get some practice at that with a smaller problem set, because the problems you're going to be dealing with and trying to solve while your future officers are going to be a lot more dynamic, a lot more difficult than just sport. So if you're prepared, you're always going to be in a place to get the job done when it does come time to get the job done, but you also have to be adaptable at the same time. Another thing I think this gives you a big opportunity to do is not just love the result of something. You get to actually love the process. So love going to practice, love finding new ways to do things. And I think that's something that helped me while I went through and made the Olympic team to get there, was I had a lot of uncertainty I had to deal with, and I really had to love the process to get there.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Thanks to all of you. And it's just so valuable what you have to share, and we appreciate the way you're sharing it. So thank you. I'm looking at the Q&A, and there's a number of questions in here. If cadet athletes, if you have some more questions, we'd love to see them. But let me throw this one out to the panel that, you know, obviously each of you has faced adversity at some point in your life, and many of you have been in that team captain role or served as leaders on it, your team, a team, whatever that team may be. You know, what did you do to help others stay motivated, to help others, help your teammates, you know, continue to be who they want to be, to do what they want to do? And I'll just, if any of you have, rather me continue to just keep calling on people. If anyone really wants to take that one, go ahead. Or if you prefer, I can call on a few of you.
I can kick it off.
Oh, go, Casey, yeah.
So I think relating to kind of the situation we're in, I think the low-hanging fruit to do in a locker room, if you're in a team sport, is to buy into the, you know, uncertainty that we just talked about, and kind of let it fester and fuel and be a large topic of conversation in the locker room. And as a leader, I think it's important to acknowledge that there is a lot of uncertainty going on, and there's a lot of frustration probably on your guys' teams about, you know, if you're going to have a season, if you've already lost seasons. I think those are all real thoughts, and you can't ignore them as the leader. But I think the thing that needs to happen as a captain is you need to come with solutions or foster kind of a community where you can find solutions and not just dwell on the negatives. I think if you can do that, you can start making positive impacts and progress in a time like we just talked about, where there's going to be a lot of teams that don't make progress in this. And if you can acknowledge what's going on while also fostering, you know, answers to those problems, I think you'll find a lot of success. And I think it's a great avenue for captains.
Kelly?
I think something like that Kelly said a little bit is be the person that other people need you to be sometimes, but also remember to take care of yourself. So like my summer with my friend, she's my competitor, but she became my training partner, and that didn't really happen on accident. I'm a homebody. I'm thrilled to like stay home and be by myself. Even to this day, like I'm doing fine, and I know that that's weird, but my friend is not that way. And she was in like a 50 square foot, like, apartment without a kitchen in San Diego by herself. And I just knew that that was not going to be good for her. So it wasn't a sacrifice by any means, but it was just recognizing that I can play a really positive role in this person's life, bring her into my life, help everybody succeed. That turned into having just a really fun little javelin community with Dana Lyon, my coach, throughout the summer at a safe social distance. And like, it's no effort because there's, clear communication and everyone is getting what they need while helping each other out. So just recognizing that little extra effort to be put towards someone else can go like so far in situations like this, to speak to somebody and let them know that you see their value and that you can help them and get better together.
I would say being brave is the first step, because and when I say that, I mean like being brave to and courageous to talk about how you're really feeling. I think you got to communicate with one another, and you have to be willing to reach out. And I've said this before, but I think that typically if you're feeling a certain way, so are others, and just leaving it alone is not going to be healthy for anyone. And so, addressing it and being brave to express it, but also for those receiving it, being able to listen and to be there and not, and have empathy. And it's not something, this is not a time, obviously, with everything going on. Everyone's experiencing this differently. So it's definitely not a time to, take lightly how someone is saying something. If someone trusts you to come up and express this, and you should be able to show that this is an open avenue to be able to have these conversations. It's something that needs to be done, and I think that any leader, as long as you feel comfortable with that, should take that up to sometimes ask, hey man, are you okay? And then on top of that, leading by example throughout your life, and carrying yourself the way that you want your team to follow.
I think one of the things I would
Go.
add.
Yes, thank you.
One of the things I would add would be the sport in and of itself generates camaraderie, but without it on a regular basis, you might have to find ways to generate camaraderie within your team that is a little bit different than your normal day-to-day rhythm. So I would just say be a little bit creative with how you can either broaden your relationships within the team, generate some camaraderie, have new sayings or new ways of going about having fun. I know it's difficult with social distancing and all that kind of stuff, but there's ways to go about having fun. And I think that would really break down, and I agree, communication is key. But you have to have a little fun in there, or else it's not going to work for the long haul.
Thanks, Jennifer. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next question? All right, and by the way, Cody, thanks for that first question. We appreciate it. I'll state these two questions together, and I'd like for you to address one first because they're related, and then we can revisit the second one. The first one has to deal with disappointment of basically losing a season. As you all, as the panelists are well aware, a lot of the athletes on the webinar tonight have lost a competition season. Some of them even two, depending on the timing of their seasons and when things got canceled last year, and as we continue to move into and through this year. So just that, disappointment, how do you handle that? How do you just kind of address that? So that's the first question. The second one is that balance between, I think Kara brought this up, the self-care and really, making sure that you are taking care of yourself so that you can also help take care of, support, be engaged with, and really be, a positive force for others. So the first one is, just that what might be probably is a really strong disappointment for losing a competition season. What thoughts do any of you have for our cadets?
That's something. Go
ahead. Oh, no, go ahead,
I'll
Nate.
let you go first, and then I'll hit it after you.
Okay. I was just going to say, for me, dwelling on the disappointment is the most terrible rabbit hole I can go down myself. Because the more I dwell on it, the more upset and disappointed and anxious I get about it. I think things take time. I was actually on an incredible Zoom last night where a group of USA Swimming 1980 Olympic team members got together to talk about the boycott year in 1980. And we're honoring them this year at one of our big events next week. And I was so impressed with how each of them, all 6 of them, weren't bitter towards anything. They stayed upbeat and positive. And they talked about how even though they didn't know if they were going to get to go to the Olympics or not, they still took every day as if something great could come around or something could change. And I think the more I dwell on the disappointment and the more I get complacent and don't think that something great is coming, the more challenging it is. So I just encourage it does take time, but also there is good stuff coming your way.
Thanks, Kelly. Nate?
Yeah, so something I've had to deal with is missing seasons and losing seasons quite a bit. So I tried to make the 2014 Sochi team. I failed at that. I took a moment to process that, and I think it's very important that you take a moment to process it, because anytime that happens, there's going to be a lot of emotion. There's going to be a lot of disappointment to deal with, and if you don't take a moment to process it and get through it, it's going to affect you for a long time. But also, like Kelly said, you don't want to dwell on that for a long time. You need to get back to work. You need to focus. You need to, kind of reset goals and reevaluate, but always keep moving forward. You don't want to get stuck in that rut where you're just disappointed that you missed a season. You want to get out of that mindset. Instead of looking at the season that you lost, start looking to the opportunity you have ahead. So I think that's something you can do to really kind of get through that is look ahead, because there's always going to be more opportunities ahead. And more work to be done. So take a moment, process it, deal with the emotions of it, but then at the end of the day, kind of refocus and get back to working towards your goals.
I think also recognizing the work that you've done. It's not your fault that the season was canceled or you missed it, or even if you're just injured and it's not about a global pandemic, there's a lot of really good work that you did to prepare for that season, and a lot of things you can learn from the work that you did, even if you don't get to show that off in competition. So disappointment is part of the game. There's a lot you can learn from all the work that you did before the season got canceled as well. So don't count it out, all those reps and sets.
I would also like to preface, especially with what Nate and Kelly had brought up about, reevaluating your goals and looking for other ways to grow. It doesn't have to be just as an athlete. We are more than what we are. I'm not just a wrestler. And something I've realized actually through this is a lot of my friends are struggling with that. Like, they're like, we don't have competitions, we don't have that. And they're like, and I'm like, dude, what, you're more than just wrestling, and like, especially like the younger ones, the ones that are like on the brink of coming into the senior level and like lost that senior year. Now they don't have any middle ground, they're just kind of caught in the middle. It's definitely having those conversations about figuring out who they are and figuring out other things and other ways to grow as a person. But I think that's a big important thing that, reevaluating your goals and growing doesn't have to be within the sport. It can be as who you are as an individual. Who I am as Jaden Cox is not just a wrestler. And if you ask me, in fact, wrestling would probably be one of the last things I would put on my list. It just so happens that I'm relatively all right at it, and I enjoy doing it. And it kind of pays me a little bit. So I go ahead and stick with it too, but that's just something I do. But as far as who I am, that is completely different. And that's why I think taking this on this pandemic, it's finding more ways than just on the mat to improve myself.
think too, just to add something on my end is, what we're talking about here is a learned skill, getting over emotions, getting over disappointment, or even success. In football, we talk about the 24-hour rule. You have a big win, enjoy it for 24 hours, and then you're on to the next one, right? And it's a skill you can learn. And like Jaden said, it's a life skill. You're going to have ups and downs for the rest of your guys' lives, successes and failures, and finding a way to push through strong emotions is going to be something that's going to make you successful in life. And in terms of how to deal with it, see this as part of kind of you're faced with a challenge and faced with something you can tangibly try to work at getting better at. It could give you another goal, a different type of goal to look at.
I think one way to look at it is just from a strategic standpoint in terms of training. Understand that until you accept the reality of the current situation, you can't move forward. And we're all loss averse, and so when we think about what we've lost, it hurts. But the reality is we can't control the past. We can only control the future. And so the faster you can start focusing on the future and how you can prepare for it, the easier it's going to be to move past it. But it's part of grit is accepting the reality of today when it's not what you wanted it to be. And so, that's certainly important for the military, and I know it's one of the values for the Air Force Academy, but it's a necessary trait for great athletes as well. So I would just be strategic and think, all right, well, if I want to be as good as I possibly could be, I got to move forward. That means I got to accept this and stop dwelling on it.
Thanks, Darren. And into that second question then in this set, balancing that, taking care of yourself and making sure that you are in a place where you can also, as a leader on your team, contribute to and help take care of others. Love to hear your thoughts on how you balance that for whoever wants to respond.
Well, I go from, I call it the lifeguard approach. And basically, I'll kind of explain it. When someone's, drowning in the water, it's not smart for someone else who doesn't have the training or the ability to go and try to save that person. Typically, they both end up in trouble. And if you are that person, like if you do have the ability or you have the will and the ability to have the conversations and help somebody else, go ahead. And if you don't, then and you see that somebody else is struggling, like ask someone else for help, and look to other people. You guys don't have a shortage of peers, of mentors, of people to reach out to and talk to, And so it doesn't always have to be you jumping in the water, but it doesn't mean that you can't be like, hey, I noticed that, hey, this person's struggling. And it is okay to be like, hey, I've reached my limit emotionally, and I can't do everything for this, but like I can still, hey, I've noticed this is going on and they need some help. There's not a shortage of people to ask for help.
I think both these questions are related in the sense that it requires you to know yourself. You have to know yourself well enough to know how you handle disappointment as well as how you handle taking care of yourself and taking care of others. So I think a time of reflection is very important to understand how well do you know what you need in order to be better? How well do you take care of yourself right now, and how can you work on that skill? Some of the things that I like to do is just personally take some time away from the hustle and bustle and get away and get to an independent space, because that helps me to just ground myself. Obviously, the spiritual side is very important, but if you have the opportunity to write down those things that you require to take care of yourself, you got to revisit those over and over again, or otherwise you're gonna take care of yourself in the wrong way. So got to know yourself well enough to know what you need.
I think just adding a little bit onto that would be, you can also teach people how you would like to be treated. In relation to sport, I remember my coach, Terry McKeever, who was the first head Olympic women's coach and my greatest mentor. She would have us sit knee to knee, and we'd have to tell someone exactly what we would need behind the blocks before a race, before we got ready, so that people knew what we needed, teach people how to be treated. And that's just a very small example of how you can teach people how to be treated. I told you guys earlier, most of my friends think I'm very overly optimistic and positive. And it took me just letting my best friend know, hey, I need you to check on me once a week. If you don't hear from me, you just need to check on me and make sure I'm doing okay. Or with It's My Boss, we have weekly catch-ups, whether we talk about stressful things at work or we talk about, you know, what we did on our weekends. It's just so important to be able to teach people what you need as well.
So I think Jaden hit it really well with his lifeguard approach, and that's something you see in other places too. Like when you're on an airplane, they tell you, "Hey, put your oxygen mask before you put on anyone else's, before you help anyone else." And in the military as well, you know, as a medic, the first rule I have of doing any medicine is finish the gunfight first. I don't do any medicine until we're done and we've won the fight. I need to take care of myself before I try and help anyone else. Because if you haven't done that, you risk, you know, being brought down yourself or not being able to effectively provide that help. So if you're not taking care of yourself, you might think you're trying to help, or you might think you're doing something, but people are going to notice it. People are going to see it. You do a much better job of providing that if you've taken care of yourself first. So I think that's super important to do.
All right. Curie and Kylie, thanks for those questions. We appreciate it. Another question, you know, when you're surrounded by people who are potentially negative, even that there's toxicity in the environment, and, you know, you can imagine just in this, with what we're dealing with COVID and the season we're in, you've experienced as well. I know for the panelists, some of the toxicity or negativity, you know, what do you do to keep your head above all that and keep moving forward? What are some of the things that you turn to or the ways you deal with that?
I can talk about like actual toxicity for a second in terms of infectiveness. So at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center, there are very specific like guidelines about how we have to report symptoms twice a day. If you report one symptom, you're flagged, you get tested. You can't go to the training center. Something extra that I'm dealing with currently is my second career ACL tear. I am almost 3 months post-op. It's amazing. I haven't cried about it in a while, so I don't expect to, but don't be surprised if it happens. So I spent all summer at home and it went really well. I had this positive atmosphere. And then I was really surprised to go back to the training center in the aftermath of this injury and be overwhelmed with happiness about being around my team again. It's happening. But fast forward to kind of this surge in cases in Colorado and even more strict guidelines. I had a little bit of a sore throat on Sunday. I reported it like I'm supposed to, and then I was not allowed to go to the center for 2 days. But there are other stories about people not reporting their symptoms, and then the aftermath of that is just a snowball of people that might be infected, have to stay away. Like the community aspect of being honest about your situation, telling people even when it's hard that this might be an issue, and I have to tell you because I'm committed to the community, even though it's essential that I come in and have this rehab time. It was really great to be told, thank you for telling us, thank you for doing the right thing. I know it was hard because I know that you care about this like physical presence in the rehab process, and you can extrapolate that to attitudes all over the place. Like if someone's toxic and not really worried about how they're affecting your experience, it's up to you to say something to them or like rise above it and remove yourself from the situation. You don't have to, again, solve everyone else's problems, but recognizing what you need and how it'll make you feel even better to do the right thing is really important, because those opportunities are rare when we don't even get to interact with that many people. So.
I think too, something to touch on is whoever asks the question, I think ask yourself, if you buy into the toxicity, are you going to be effective? Is that going to be a good space for you to be successful and do the things you need to do and reach your goals? If the answer is no, I think then it may help you avoid all that, and avoid just kind of even getting into it. Just a simple reminder that getting into the toxicity and the negativity is not going to make me successful. I should probably just avoid it. And if it becomes a bigger issue, like we've all said in the panel here, is you don't have to solve everybody's problems. You can find a solution a different way, but don't think you need to solve everybody's issues.
Yeah, to add on to both of those, removing myself from the situation is huge. And for me, during this time has been social media. I have a younger sister and she swims at Colorado Mesa, and she's dealing with what you guys are dealing with right now. So I can definitely sympathize from the many calls I get, probably 5 missed FaceTime calls during this short amount of time, that something's changed and something's hard and someone said this, and on social media someone said this, and it turns into this, ripple effect of negativity. And I do believe social media can be used in the positive. What we're doing right now is incredible. Getting a group together and being able to express. I just would really caution that anything in the social media that you're seeing or what you're posting and what you're saying can either add to that toxic environment, or, maybe be better. It's very hard also in these times, because if you see your friend out hanging out with someone else and their, teammates, you get a little frustrated, a little nervous, a little anxious, because they're not supposed to be doing that. So I just would advise to take a step away if you can. It really cleaned my mind and cleared my thoughts.
I would say also and this is going to sound kind of weird, but don't try not to take everything personally, but also have empathy for people, because everyone's dealing with things differently. And so really the reason someone might be acting up and creating or acting in a toxic manner can be completely different than what they're really showing or expressing. And I found, with me, especially with day and age, with everything going on, with the season we're in, with the pandemic, with even elections and things and opinions and stuff, there's a lot of different reasons. And we all know that fear and panic and uncertainty, a lot of the words that we use for a lot of people can cause them to maybe act in ways that they normally wouldn't, or even act in ways that they don't even understand themselves of why. And so if you can kind of put that in perspective, it could probably ease how you receive everything that's going on around you.
Yeah, thanks, Jaden. We have about 10 minutes left, and we'd like to get it to at least 2 more questions. So I'm going to throw another one out to the panel before we get to that final question. With this COVID environment, a lot of our cadet athletes have lost access to the resources typically considered necessary for their training. Now, how do you deal with the anxiety related not being able to train at the highest level? In this environment where you may not be able to train at the highest level. I think it was Kelly mentioned that there's some window cleaner, wiper fluid for weights there. How do you navigate not being able to not having the resources available to train at the highest level?
I had to laugh because earlier in the year I was using paint cans for my training. So, I think one thing to remember is that you're not the only one going through this. And if you look throughout history and our past, people have been very, very successful at sport, doing push-ups and sit-ups, and obviously training has evolved to what it is today. It's very technical. There's a lot of technology in it. But sometimes the best things you can do are just simple things you can do at your house. It's going to be different. It's going to feel different. But different doesn't mean it's not effective. I think that's one big thing to remember. And if you need kind of proof to buy into it, reach out to strength staff that you have, call some people, and they can assure you that there's a lot of things you can do to be successful. And I think Kara touched on it, that sometimes some of the things that athletes need, high-level athletes need the most, is a little bit of a break, a little bit of a different change in training. And just trust the process. Find people who you know who have your best interests in mind, and trust the process.
And I know when I started, what I did was I made a list for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I made different, like, on Post-it notes, and I put the Post-it notes around different workouts around my house. So when I went in the living room, I got to do this many push-ups on Monday and do this workout on Tuesday. Go in the kitchen, it's a different workout, and so on and so forth. I got real tired of that real quick because I'm forgetful. I would forget like a pin. And so I go in the kitchen, have to do 25 push-ups, and then I go back into the living room, and then I'm like, I got the pen, but where's the notebook? It's in the kitchen. Go back to the kitchen, and it's just I was doing a lot, but like finding little different ways like that to improve. And I think a big thing is, like, it's not the resources that made you who you are as an athlete that you are. It's the person that yourself, you know. And so sometimes getting things done the old-fashioned way, there's no problem with that. Now I get it, like a routine, like maybe things are switching up, and that can cause a little strife and a little bit of struggle and everything. But I think the biggest step is, have faith in yourself, and make the adjustments where you can. And like we've kind of all said this, and we all agree with this, but we got to control what we can control, and do what we can do.
So I love this question. Absolutely love this question. So I think you can do one of two things. You can either make excuses, or you can be adaptable and you can find a way to get results. So for those of you guys that don't know, I made my Olympic team being deployed 3 summers in a row. All my training was done on these deployments. I wasn't at the Olympic Training Center. I didn't have the resources available that all these other guys I was competing against had, but I wasn't going to let that be an excuse as to why I didn't make the team. So when I was in Africa, I was pushing side-by-side raisers, using what I had available to me to lift weights, pushing trucks, doing sprints with water cans. You can either let these things be excuses as to why you don't make it to where you want to be, why you don't become a champion, why you don't make that team, or you can use it as something. Again, it's an opportunity to build your story, and it's a challenge that you can overcome. So you have the resources available to you at all times. I can promise you that. It's whether or not you have the mindset to get the work done. And if you have that mindset, you'll be able to find a way, even in times like this.
I think as far as managing the anxiety of it too, like the preparation to train at home or train in your dorm room or whatever you have available, it might seem like very little, but I would say to manage that anxiety, just start. Like, make a plan and just start. Because when I started training at home, I had the same thoughts, like, is this going to be enough? Do I have enough equipment? How's this going to go? But once I created a plan with my coaches, I was exhausted at the end of each day, and I didn't expect that to happen. But these alternative workouts, like Casey said, going back to basics or having just some more fundamental movement, are so much harder than you expect them to be because we're used to all of the resources that we have. But it was very fun to get so much work done on my little 0.10 of an acre property, and still be great. But just get going and you'll be surprised at how much work you can do, which can alleviate your anxiety, because we all just want to feel like athletes, and the training is part of that. So just get it done, get moving.
Thanks, Karen. We only have about 5 minutes left, 4 to 5 minutes, and we do want to get to that final question that everyone voted on at the beginning. So I'd like to hear from everyone as we start to wrap up this panel. And Jennifer, if it's all right, we'll start with you. What is the greatest adversity you ever faced, and what was the biggest factor that helped you deal with it? So the biggest adversity and the biggest factor that helped you deal with that adversity, Jennifer.
So I guess I would say, from an athlete perspective, my freshman year, I tore my ACL. And my senior year, I had another, right before the season started, another knee surgery, and now I had a total of 4. at that time, that was my greatest adversity because, like yourselves, I was extremely dedicated to my sport and extremely concerned that anything that I did that hampered my progress forward was going to affect me for the long term. I think what got me through at that time was just dedication to the process. So we've heard a lot about setting goals, dedicating yourself to training and the process, and just accepting that you might be different on the back end, but that the process will make you into a better person overall, because you'll now find new motivations, new ways of doing things, maybe new skills that you didn't know you had. And I think just as I've gotten older and I've now transitioned from sport to what I would consider similar to sport, but flying the A-10 and being a military professional, there's been a significant number of adversities, you know, deployed and everything else. But the principles are exactly the same. You set those goals, you dedicate yourself to the training, to the skills that you need to be successful, and you push through with that dedication. And that's gonna serve you over the long haul. So don't give up those principles. They're all the same, whatever the adversity is. And then surround yourself with people that you know are gonna support you through that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Darren?
Yeah, actually never told anyone this story before, so thanks for the question. So I was training for decathlon at Berkeley, and this is near the end of my track career. I'd just been married, and my wife had a miscarriage, and it hit me really hard, and I didn't expect it. And I didn't tell anyone about it, and didn't tell my coach, my training partners. And so I remember we were doing this hill workout. It's about 250 meters. And I always, I prided myself on being really tough in terms of training. And so my training partners would break, but I never would. And this day I did. And I'll never forget, my coach said to me, "It's the first time I've ever seen you break." And he didn't understand why, and I didn't tell him. And I'm sharing this because in hindsight, it would have been so much better for me to talk to them. And I'm sure they would have been very supportive, and I'm sure the coach could have related. And so I made it, a lot harder than it should have been, and it took a lot longer to get over it than it should have, just because I didn't want to talk. And as athletes, you want to, you feel like you need to be invincible, and you don't want to show vulnerability. And that was a time that it wasn't fair to them, it wasn't fair to myself. And so, anyhow, I made it a lot harder than it should have been. Learned a lot from that. But that's probably a cautionary tale on how not to do it. But that's the hardest thing I had to deal with as an athlete.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Darren. We appreciate it. And for the cadet athletes, we will go just a couple minutes over. Thanks for sticking with us. We appreciate it. And Kara, to you, please.
Sure. I touched on it earlier. This second ACL tear is really difficult. It's going super well, which is really fun, but Jaden touched on earlier a little bit, having other things in your life. So the first time I tore my ACL 8 years ago, I was just an athlete. I'd been out of college for 3 years and I hadn't gone back to grad school yet. So I had this identity crisis, and that's what made that first experience really difficult. This time I have so much else in my life, and that's really great. And that makes dealing with the injury easier. But at the same time, I just love competing, throwing the javelin, training for it, the community that I get to be a part of so much, that the fear of that being ripped away with the second injury was way more intense than last time, because I've had a decade plus of that phenomenal, super fun experience. And the thing that really got me through it was I called my husband. I wasn't with him when it happened, but when he answered the phone and I was like losing my mind sobbing, he said, "Kara, whatever happens, it's going to be okay." And that was exactly what I needed to hear. So the motivation that I do just love this life and I want to keep doing it is so much better than like being afraid to lose it. Plus I have just all of this extra support that I didn't have the first time. So it's my greatest adversity, living it right now, but it's going well again. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kara. Nate?
So the greatest adversity I've had to deal with is, you know, kind of very similar to what you guys are dealing with now. Is just uncertainty. So for 4 years, I was deploying every summer, continuing to, you know, to do my job as a Green Beret, but also do my passion, which was try and become an Olympian. So I never knew if I was going to get a chance to try and make a team, if I was going to get a chance to compete. Something that motivated me and you know, kept me driven during those 4 years leading up was I just kept reminding myself that adversity is a good thing. No one wants to go and watch a movie where, you know, the main character doesn't have to struggle. He doesn't have to overcome anything. He doesn't have to fight anything. These things that you deal with, you know, I kept reminding myself are things that are going to make my story better. And I'm going to be able to keep working, because at the end of the day, even if I don't make it, even if I don't achieve that goal, I'm going to be able to look myself in the mirror at the end of the day. And I'm going to be able to tell myself, hey, at least you tried. You did everything in your power to know that you went after that and did what you were passionate about. And that's something that you don't want to do the opposite of. You don't want to be, you know, sitting in bed or, you know, sitting in a chair at 50, 60 years old, thinking to yourself, what if? What if? So what kept me going is I didn't want to be there one day saying, what if? But at the same time, I had no idea whether or not I would ever get the chance, but I put in the work anyway. And I'm incredibly happy I did. I think that's just something super important to do, is when you're dealing with adversity, to keep working, keep reminding yourself why you're doing it, and be accountable to yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. And Kelly.
Like many of my fellow panelists, my greatest adversity within sport were my injuries. I broke my back not only the time I mentioned when we first met when I was 16, but again in my senior year in college, and again last year. So it's something that keeps coming up. And like I tell my parents, it's just something to add to my story, add to my resilience, add to my grit. I trained myself after a year of not touching any type of water, any type of equipment, any exercise. I trained myself back at a 24-hour fitness on Colorado Boulevard. I got to start with 125 freestyle. And for my swimmers out there, to get your suit, cap, goggles on to do 125 was crazy. And every time I was pain-free, I got to double that. And when I look back on those times, I realize the simple, the humble spaces helped focus my attention. It was not a grand facility, not an Olympic pool. It was a simple, humble space that I was doing it for myself. I was doing it for the people I cared about and adding it to my story. The other thing I wanted to mention to you guys is your heart doesn't know what exercise is. And I truly believe that. Whether you're going on a run or you're doing sit-ups or you're doing jumping jacks while watching TV, your heart doesn't know what you're doing. And I keep telling my little sister that, and she's starting to believe it a little bit more day by day. And I just encourage you guys to choose Spartan. That was our saying in college. It was out of a little book of talent, and it was tip number 6. Choose Spartan. Choose, rather than the luxury items, choose the hard stuff, and add it to your story. And it makes you who you are today. And those 3 back injuries make me who I am today. Thank you guys so much. Also, I'm so grateful. And I'll be thinking of all of you and cheering you all on, and knowing you're doing the hard work behind the scenes.
Thanks, Kelly. Casey?
Yeah, I think the thing that comes to mind right now is just the situation we're in today, where it just seems like living your everyday to-day life is putting you at risk of losing your season, right? For me, it's if I test positive, I'm the only long snapper on the team. What's that going to do to my career? What's it going to do to my season? And being a dad of 2 young kids, it's balancing all of those things is very difficult. But the one thing that it has done is it's allowed me to be more efficient. It's allowed me to be a better planner. It's allowed me to be, more cognizant of what I do every single day. And every day I wake up, I tell myself we got to do X, Y, and Z to stay safe and be successful. Let's do those things and just roll with the punches, because the punches are coming, whether there's a pandemic or not, there's going to be punches thrown at you, and it's how do you react and how do you respond to them. So I think that's it. And I've been cut 2-3 times in my career. Those were tough times too. But again, it's what these guys have all said. How do you handle that adversity? How do you come back from it? How do you take it in stride? And it's allowed me to be successful.
Thanks, Casey. And Jaden, over to you.
Well, my greatest adversity is it's more like Dr. Steele's is more personal. One of the things to remember, guys, is that we are people first and athletes second. So for me, it's I've dealt with a lot with depression, with PTSD. I've been on the brink of taking my own life quite a few times. In fact, this is the first time I'm telling anybody this. In fact, my tattoos that I get or that I've gotten this far are actually on my arms at least, are to cover up scars from self-harm. I've self-medicated. I've tried to find wells that were very empty to deal with issues that needed to be confronted. And even though, and it's crazy because like, even though I was going through those things, especially in college, was when it was at its peak. Even though those things were happening, the athlete flourished and no one knew. I was very much, hey, I want to keep this on the down low, and you almost fool yourself like I'm controlling it, I'm under control, I can deal with this, and it's really not. And it's taking, in fact, you being silent of you is that taking control of you. And everything, because it can lead you to do things you probably wouldn't normally do or shouldn't do, or things that are just hurting you. And so for me, I think the biggest thing for me that helped me was finally one day that I asked for help, and I remember that day a lot. I remember so I struggled to go to sleep at times with PTSD. I would wake up from these night terrors, and I would go for a drive, and driving calms me down for some reason, which is weird because I hate driving. But I go on drives, and I get in my car and I would drive, and it would calm me down. And just one day it just wouldn't snap. And I remember I was standing on Highway 63 in my hometown, and I get a phone call. And that's such a millennial thing to do, is like you have your phone with you at such a moment. But I had a phone call from my trainer because I was late to practice, and he asked me, where I was, and I remember I was in tears and I was crying, and I just begged him for help, and that there were so many things wrong and I was struggling. And from there on out, my coaches and I had people come around me, and once I did that, to see the net of support and love and dedication just to make sure you're okay, was amazing. And so from that, I got help. I started seeing a therapist, and at first I was like pretty much anyone else with therapy. It was like, almost felt shame in a way, or felt like something was wrong with you. In reality, it's like there isn't anything wrong with you. It's just everyone struggles. Everyone has their different things they have to go through. And so, and once I started talking about things I was feeling, things I was experiencing, things I had experienced, talking through things and not just burying anything, the load on myself started to become lighter. And really, in the reality of things, is when we think we're burying something, in reality, you're burying yourself. It's not the thing that you're carrying is not being buried. It's you. And we sometimes get that confused. But just talking it out and finding new avenues. For instance, writing was a big thing. So I wouldn't try to bury anything. I have to be honest with myself, and I put it on paper and I get it out. Finding people I trust and I can talk to about it was a big thing for me. And really, in reality, even whenever I was competing, and I was a freshman, I was a true freshman. I won a national title, and I was still going through this. That's a hard thing to beat. But whenever I got rid of that and I finally climbed up from the hole that I was in, not only was my competition better, but overall my life and my outlook on things were better. And that was the most important thing. And that's why after that, things just meant so much more, and it was so much brighter to life. And so I think the big thing is just to talk to people, reach out. Don't be afraid to express it. Because like I said, once I really expressed that, I actually learned a lot about my teammates, the people around me, that it's not something that I was alone in. And it's something I never was alone. I just kept it to myself, and I allowed myself to be that way.
Yeah, thanks, Jaden. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks to all of our panel members tonight for sharing your knowledge, sharing your experiences, sharing your heart, and mostly just sharing yourself. It means so much that you make the time to join us for this. I know we went long. I apologize for that. That's 100% my responsibility. I did not manage the time better. Just thank you. And thanks to our cadet athletes for joining us tonight. I know I'm incredibly inspired by what I hear, by what I've heard, and I'm thinking many of you are as well. Thanks for the questions you asked. Just thanks for being a part of this and being a part of this conversation. We hope that you found value for yourself and even for others in the conversation. A couple other quick thank yous to the NCLS team, the National Character and Leadership Symposium team that helped put all this together, and especially Major Kristen Hobbs, who did more work behind the scenes than I'm aware of, but I know she did a lot. There's some coaches that joined us. I know Chris and Dustin, I saw you on there, so thanks. A couple CCLD faculty colleagues, Dave and Jackie, thanks for being a part of this. And to Kevin Beechwood, the gentleman behind the scenes who was running all the technical aspects of tonight. Kevin, thanks so much for what you do and for what you add in the way you make these events come alive for everyone. For all the cadet athletes, as soon as we end the webinar, there will be a survey that pops up in your browser, whatever your default browser is. We ask you to look for that survey. We want your feedback. We want to know what we can do, how we can partner with you, what we can offer as you deal with just what you deal with any day of the week, and then especially in these times when things can be even more challenging. So we are inviting you to please look for that survey as soon as the webinar ends and complete that for us. The last thing I'll say, I already mentioned the NCLS staff. We encourage you to look for NCLS conversations coming up. We know that the event will happen in February, towards the end of February. This is a partnership with that. This particular Team Captain Enhancement Program session is a partnership with the National Character and Leadership Symposium. We appreciate, we value that partnership. And just one more time to the athletes on the panel, thank you for being a part of us, for sharing yourselves with us. We so appreciate that. We so value it, and we appreciate you. And that's all we have, unless Kristen or Kevin, if I missed anything. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jaden, Casey, Kelly, Nate, Kara, Darren, Jennifer. Thank you so much. That was amazing.